Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to Bad Thoughts Studios. Today we have a big panel on our hands. We're going to be talking about something George R. R. Martin had mentioned in one of his not a blog, which is on his website. He talks about like the toxicity of films and books, and the opinions that people give on those things. So I kind of want to get into it, but first, let me introduce my panel. Slimer, how's it going, Slimer? How's everything?
It's going good, man. How you doing?
After that Ghostbusters trailer, I'm so excited, bro. I cannot wait for
Yeah,
it.
I love it. I love that you're into it, man.
Dude, like, don't get me wrong, dude. It was a movie that I've seen, like, but I wasn't as interested into it. But
Mhm.
after watching like these trailers, I cannot be more hyped.
Yeah, yeah.
Cannot be more
That,
hyped.
that's just general consensus. People seem to be really hyped about it. I hope it delivers.
I know for how's it going, OG? How's everything, bro?
It's going fantastic, Tones. It's always a good time talking shop with you. I'm really looking forward to tonight. And yeah, it's going to be a really, really fun show.
Yeah, I'm excited. When we talk Disney stuff, like Disney movies and stuff like that, I love your opinion because of how entwined you are with Disney. And when you come over to like do Game of Thrones episodes and other TV shows, and you're just as entwined with those kind of shows, I love talking to you, bro, because you have so much knowledge on these shows just as much as I do.
Oh, thank you,
I
brother. I
love
appreciate that.
having you on. Love
Thank you,
having you
brother.
on.
Appreciate
Colin,
that.
how you doing, Colin? How's everything, bro?
Doing amazing, doing well. Great to be
Yes,
here. Thanks for having me on.
of course, bro. Game of Thrones, bro. We're on, or House of the Dragon, I should say. We're almost there. Almost there. We got 5-6 more months, I believe, something like that. I think they said August. Did you hear anything about that?
I heard something similar too, closer to like the end of the year, I think.
Yeah.
So
Okay. Yeah, I heard August, but I'm not too sure when. But hey, I actually got a question before we start. Winds of Winter. Are you going to read that as if the shows didn't exist?
Um, well, yeah, pretty much. I mean,
Okay.
especially from because sequentially, like in the book, in the series, you know what I mean? Like there's things
Yeah.
that haven't happened that have happened in the show and vice versa. So it's kind of like two different canons. You know, you're just gonna follow the book canon and the show canon. They're both valid in their own way. Just yeah, but it'll be interesting to see like what is accurate in the show, especially leading into those later seasons, and then what is real. And then even just saying when I read Winds of Winter, that's assuming that I do read Winds of
Yeah.
Winter, that Winds of Winter is ever published. So
I know, right? That is funny. Like I said before on this show, plenty of times when we've talked about the books and all this stuff, I have not read Game of Thrones or any of the books. I am going to read this as a Winds of Winter when it eventually comes out, just because the show is already done. All the Game of Thrones shows are done, so this will I will see another version of how he wants to end it, how George R. R. Martin wants to end it. It might be similar or might not. We'll find out once it drops. But I am going to be reading my first George R. R. Martin book once it comes out, so I'm excited for that. But yeah, guys, let's jump into it. So I kind of want to show you just the not a blog part he put in here. So I don't know if you guys can read if it's too small, but he pretty much says in films and books and TV shows, there are toxicity growing within that kind of fan base, when it comes to movies, TV shows, and books. And he says, quote, "I do not like the book X or film Y, and here's why. Now social media is ruled by anti fans who would rather talk about stuff they hate than the stuff they love,
Yeah.
and delight in dancing and graves and anyone in film who's flopped." I'll start with you, OG. What's your thoughts on this? What's going through your head when it comes to this?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm a Disney guy. You know what I'm saying? I like my channel. We talk about Disney parks. We talk like the movies, all that stuff. So there's like right now, there's probably there's probably not a single company in the world right now that's hated more than Disney, right? Like everyone hates on Disney. And it's like, it's not
Unfortunately.
only do people hate on it, but it's become like this industry almost, right? Like on YouTube, like people make a living on hating on the Mouse House,
Mhm.
you know? And so I can see what George R. R. Martin is talking about, where it's like this grave dancing, where it's like, oh, the latest movie flopped. I don't like that movie. I think it's woke, or I think it's conservative. So, haha, it flopped. And there's this kind of like this gleefulness that comes out of that. And it is pretty toxic. And I don't really understand that, right? Like, for example, I don't really, I'm not really into a lot of things. Like, I don't like the Minion movies. I just don't. I like animation, but the Minion movies are not my thing. I think they're just kind of just for kids and whatever. I don't really get anything out of it. But I wouldn't find like happiness or joy in like a Minion movie flopping, right? Like it's a weird kind of headspace to be in. And unfortunately, a lot of fans are in that headspace. It's like, oh, I don't like that movie. So ha ha ha, it flopped. And it's just really, really strange. I don't know. And I find myself too, like even like on Twitter, like the other day, there was some news that dropped about the Epic Universe park over there in Florida, which looks fantastic. I mean, Universal, it looks like they're going all out with that place, and they release a lot of great stuff. And I had a few criticisms, but were like really minor,
Yeah.
But I was like, you know what? I'm not even going to say it on Twitter. You know what I'm saying? Because the minute you say it on Twitter, dude, you get all the heat and stuff. It just becomes so toxic, and you can't have like an honest adult conversation with people anymore, right? And that's what I love about hanging out with you guys, is because we can do that. We do that in our little space here, like on your channel, on my channel. We can have conversations, we can criticize, we can praise, and it's all good. But in the bigger kind of ether, the fan ether, it's tough, man. You just can't do it. It's like you'll get like mobbed. There's people out there like on Twitter, like they're doxing people because they think you're like a pixie duster or something, or they think you're this, that, and the other. It's like, it's ridiculous how bad it's gotten out there. And it's sad because a lot of people out there that just love this stuff just want to talk about it honestly and constructively. And it's harder to do that because it's like we're in a room full of crazy people, and it's like, and there's like, we have like 4 or 5 sane people, and everyone is like, just going nuts. So yeah, it's sad, man. I agree with what George R. R. Martin's comment. I agree with him on that. It's really gotten bad. Another thing too, real quick, is even like George Lucas had this issue years ago. When he tried to do like, whatever you think about Star Wars, whatever you think about the prequels or the sequel, I mean, the special editions, he even had the same complaints that George R. R. Martin is saying, where it's like, he would do things and try new things with Star Wars, and the fans would attack him for it. And he said basically the same thing that Martin is saying, where it's like, it wasn't fun anymore. He couldn't experiment or try anything new because every time he moved or did anything, people were just like jumping on him. And that's sad. I think that's really, really sad.
It's sad because it's like he wants to do something a tad different, and he gets crucified for it. And he's put like George Lucas, for instance, he's put out amazing work, like legendary work. If he does something a little different, he gets crucified for it, and that doesn't make sense. You know what I'm saying?
Makes no sense at all.
Slimer, what about you? What do you think about this?
Yeah. So I think that OG really pointed out when the new zeitgeist started, and that started with the prequels, the Star Wars prequels. It's kind of weird, right? Because all of a sudden consumers felt like just because they have a platform now vis-a-vis social media, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook. I mean, this may have started even earlier than that. This might have started even back in the the forum chat room days.
Yeah,
right.
Of AOL Instant Messenger with the prequel trilogy. But the technology giving your general viewer a voice has had a snowball effect into now, because you have a voice, everybody feels like everybody's voice is equally legitimate compared to someone that is like an authentic critic.
Yep.
So the platform has allowed everybody to become a critic at this point. And now people have also simultaneously figured out that being a critic that that kind of leans more into the pessimistic side has more monetary value associated with it compared to somebody that makes a positive review.
Yeah.
So there's kind of like this double jeopardy effect going on, where it's like, well, now that everybody has a voice, and social media, rewards people that make negative comments versus positive comments based off of a movie or a show. People have kind of fallen into this calculus that, hey, like if you're not making a negative comment or a negative review based off of or on rather, this particular movie, TV show, book, whatever the media platform is, then you're not really considered part of, you're not really in the like in the who's who
Yeah.
of when it comes to movie reviews, TV reviews, and things like that. And it's also easier to also, with that, it's also easier to be critical as opposed to being positive. I think that there's kind of like a default attitude um, towards movies, TVs, books, etc. And that default attitude is one of pessimism and criticism and ridicule, because it's very easy to do.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like my general consensus. We can kind of expound on that. It is unfortunate, but that is part of the new zeitgeist when it comes to the conversation, the conversations that we have about any particular one fandom, TV show, book, things like that.
Well, and an interesting thing too is like there's this old kind of saying, like this old school saying, like the customer is always right, right?
Yeah.
And I understand that like kind of mentality. I get it, right? Like if you're a business owner, you want to accommodate your customers, but like I don't agree with that, right? Because like there's a lot of times I feel like the customer or the fans are not right. Like for example, you hear a lot about this on social media, like, oh, why are they doing this movie? No one asked for that. It's like, can't we get something that we didn't ask for? What's wrong with that? Did anyone ask for a Barbie movie? But when we got it, people loved it, right? In the theme park space, no one asked for Tower of Terror to get rethemed into a Guardians of the Galaxy ride. Like literally, no one wanted that, and it was met with fans hated the announcement, and then it opened, and people love it. Sometimes the thing that you don't ask for turns out pretty good, and it's okay to get something that you maybe didn't want necessarily. And sometimes the thing that you do want, people wanted more Star Wars movies, more sequels, and it didn't turn out good. So it's like, sometimes the customer isn't always right in their assumptions, and sometimes they are, to be fair. But I just think that it gets a little bit like the fans get a little too up in their own like space, and
Getting high on their own farts.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly.
And another thing, it's like he's not saying like if you don't like something, that's like he's not saying you're not supposed to like something,
Right.
He's saying like in my the way I'm reading it is like, don't hate on everything that you see. Like you said before, there's people that make money off just strictly hating off Disney, and they make videos on you and make money off of it. And it's like, if that's the way you're going into how you run a channel or a blog or whatever the case may be, I don't agree with how you run, that specific thing that you do, because it doesn't make sense. Like you're just going to be this negative Nancy. And I personally am not into watching people who do that. I'm not sure there's a big platform for people who do, but what's your opinion on this, Colin? What are you thinking about this?
Well, and I think you guys said a lot of what I was going to say, but also I have a human resources background, so when I think about providing like criticism or constructive feedback or anything related to those sort of topics, it's like it has to be actionable, it has to be relevant, and it has to be timely. So from my point of view, it's like if you're not contributing to those with those kind of things in mind to any sort of criticism, whether it's media criticism or personal criticism, if you're just hating on something because you want to hate on something, that's not going to help anything. You know what I mean? That's just griping, and that's just complaining to the wall. So, but I also think that it kind of can swing the other way too, where somebody can hide behind, oh, you're just being toxic. You know, it's like, no, I'm actually criticizing it based on points. You know what I mean? Like, I think that I have a valid argument for my criticism. It's not just, I don't like this because it was a girl, or I don't like this because it was too woke or too conservative. It's like, no, it's really these fundamental points. But I do think that it's more, and it kind of goes into all media, but like there's another expression in journalism called like, if it bleeds, it leads. So there's a lot of that too. I think it's like as much attention as you can get on something and be as much as ridiculous as you can be about it, you're going to get a lot more attention. You're going to get a lot more people tuning in to listen to it because it's like, oh, did you hear what this guy said? It's so wild. So again, kind of that same like sensationalism around it. And again, it doesn't actually further anything. You're not improving anything. You're not providing a criticism that an author or a director or somebody could internalize and say, wow, I didn't think about it from that perspective. Let me go back to the drawing board and rethink how I write stories or whatever. But yeah, again, I think it's kind of pointless. And eventually, I think ultimately it comes out of people who are more uneducated around a specific topic, you know, because if you have something to say in a proper way, or if you have true criticism, then it's going to come across that way. It's not going to come across as like an impudent child, like, oh, boo-hoo, it didn't come out the way I wanted it to. Now I'm going to beg and cry. It's like, well, you know, have a point.
That's so true. Go ahead, brother.
Oh, I'm sorry, brother. Yeah, I was gonna say too, like the people that are like kind of feeding on this negative slant is like what they don't understand is when you're negative all the time, right? When every day is a disaster for the mouse house, it loses its impact, right? Like it no longer matters. Where if you have somebody that has a little bit more of a mixed opinion, where sometimes they love what a company does or a studio does, and sometimes they rail against that company. Well, you're going to put more weight into the criticisms of the person that has that more balanced approach, because this person has shown that, yes, they like things too. So when they criticize something, it carries more weight. When you hate everything, it's like, okay, whatever. You hated the last 20 things. So why should I care about this thing now? You know what I'm saying? Go ahead, Simon. I'm sorry, brother.
Absolutely.
Well, to your point, it's like the boy who cried wolf. You know, if you say everything's bad, once that one thing is really bad, nobody really believes you anymore because you've been saying the last dozen of iterations have been bad. Yep. And to see Mill's point, we've given a lot more credence to non-subject matter experts on these topics than they actually deserve. You know, before we used to refer to the subject matter experts when it came to cinema, Siskel and Ebert. You have so many real good reviewers at the time. I'm talking about the 70s, 80s, 90s, all the way up to probably the implementation of internet within this medium. And it was, if you weren't a subject matter expert on this topic, your voice not only wasn't heard, but it just didn't exist. If you were just a general viewer, if you're a moviegoer, who are you? Nobody cared what your opinion was. But now, because of social media and because of YouTube, anybody can be a subject matter expert. And with enough likability, with enough personality, you can create enough draw and interest, and you can coalesce a fan base of people that can get behind your opinions, no matter how relevant they are. And unfortunately, this has, it's not just one person, it's a lot of people.
Yep.
And, the newest generation of adults, let's call them Gen Z, right? So people born after the year 2000, they haven't had any experience of anything different, right? So they don't know that there was a time prior to where there was an era where subject matter experts were the only opinions, voices that you would go to on, let's say, specifically cinema, right? So, and the thing is this actually spreads across things more. This actually spreads across a lot of things, right? This isn't just limited to movies. It permeates every aspect of society.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
And Tones, I think, to your credit, like I'll use you as an example. Like C-Mills, you were talking about how when we approach these things, it's good to have like to be constructive and have like actionable criticism, right? So it's like, I didn't like this thing, but this is what you could have done, right? And to Tones' credit, like that's what he did with the Percy Jackson. Like you didn't like Percy Jackson, the new series at all. But you gave reasons as to why you didn't like it and what they could do to improve it. You were like, well, you know what? I didn't like it because, hey, there was no actions. There was no fight scenes. You know what I'm saying? And it's constructive. It's not just like Tones getting up there going, oh yeah, fuck Percy Jackson. I don't like that. You know, it was like, okay, there's a reason for it. This is why I didn't like it. If they do this, I might be on board next season or something, you know? So it was that's a constructive way to go about it. So, you know, I think we all are on the same page here with this, where it's like, it's okay to not like something. It's 100% okay, you know, to not like something, but it's the way you go about it and the way you proceed with it that makes all the difference in the world.
I think
that's so true, dude.
I think that's why we get along so well, OG, because that was what exactly I was going to bring up is my Percy Jackson experience. So as he was saying, if you go back and watch my previous videos on episodes 1 and 2, I enjoyed episodes 1 and 2. I was looking forward to the rest of the series. That there wasn't much action, but there was enough to where you can kind of see where his arc is going to go. Like he wasn't trained to be a fighter in the first two episodes, and even in the trailer itself, we were begging for it to be amazing. Like it was such a great trailer. The first 2 episodes were decent. Going into episode 3, it was even a longer episode. You know, we had Medusa introduced, and we were all excited, and then we don't get any action. So my only problem with that show was just not enough action for a character who is nothing but action. So you know, that is what my problem with Percy Jackson was, and that was my criticism towards it. The storyline is okay. I don't mind the storyline, but if I were to criticize it, it would be the action. And you know, I made a video and people were telling me that it's a child show, but at the same time, it's a character that a lot of people can relate to, and a lot of ages can get behind. Like for Stranger Things, for instance, it was a all kids show. There was nothing but kids and a couple adults, but yet Stranger Things was an amazing show.
Yeah,
you know.
Well, and that's the thing, Tones, that really bugs me too, brother. Like when people fall back on it's a kids thing. So like, oh, because it's a kids thing, the quality can be like subpar. You know, like Walt Disney never had that mindset. Like when he made movies, like he made kid stuff, it was like top notch. It was like, you know, he like with Bambi, for example, he didn't talk down to children. He was going to kill the mother, and it was like, oh, like he didn't care. You know what I'm saying? When he did Fantasia, that was dark with Chernabog and the whole thing, and even Pinocchio, very dark movie, a lot of dark elements in that.
Ooh,
he didn't talk down to children.
Really dark, dude.
What was
Pinocchio? It was so dark, bro. Anyway, go ahead, OG. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, you're good. No, yeah, it's a dark movie, and I appreciate that because he doesn't underestimate children. Like, okay, they can handle that. You know what I'm saying? So when I hear people like, you know, you say like in your comments saying or whatever, telling you like on Twitter or whatever, saying like, oh, it's a kid show. It's like, so what? It's a kid show. You know what? We can't demand quality from a kid show. Why not? You know what I'm saying? Like you said, Stranger Things is basically kind of a kid show, right? Or a tween, I guess. Yep. And that's a quality show. So it happens all the time. Yeah, that's a cop out. You know, I think we can demand more from children's entertainment. I think that's okay.
Yep, I agree. Is there anything you guys want to add to this, guys?
Yeah. So let me ask you this. So prior to the internet, opinions about movies used to be written, right? You used to read them in newspapers, used to read them in articles. There's something about putting your thoughts onto paper, which is distinct from putting your thoughts into a video. You can be more thoughtful, you can be more pensive, and that allows for it allows for more clarity. It allows for a better transmission, a more accurate transmission of one's opinion versus just putting it into a video format. Unless you're just reading your thoughts on paper into a video format, which some movie reviewers do. But then again, I feel like those movie reviewers who do have videos where they're just reading their thoughts are more objective. And I think it's due to the fact that they transcribe their thoughts onto paper that allows them to be more accurate and more objective, as opposed to just fishing for clicks. So in your opinion, guys, and C Mills, OG, Tony, chime in on this. Do you feel like movie criticism, and I don't mean criticism in the derogatory way, but more like in the analytical sense, do you guys feel like the written analysis is more objective as opposed to video review, considering now that we have this the monetization of reviews? Do you feel like maybe that's like a more organic or pure way of in interpreting a movie versus just popping out a video?
You could start, Colin. Go ahead.
I think that it's kind of I was trying to think of the best way to frame this. So one thing that I was thinking when you were talking about that is like look at Rotten Tomatoes as an example, because they do both, right? So there's critic review and user review, and then on some movies, and it's usually very political, right? Like it'll be like a reason that people associate with why, but some movies will have like a 99% critic score and a 1% watcher score, and then on some movies it swaps. So I kind of don't think that there's too much, and that's just one example, right? Like Rotten Tomatoes, I don't know, I'm sure there's got thousands of people that write as reviewers for Rotten Tomatoes, but I think if you go back to like pre-internet times, I think people put a lot more value into reviews in general, because people genuinely wanted to know, is this movie good or not before I go take my family to see it, or whatever the event is. But now I think you get I think trailers have changed a lot too. So like now when people are looking at movies, you can basically watch an entire movie in a trailer now. So you kind of have the idea of what the movie's like before you go see it anyway. I don't think that those, at least style of trailers that are out now, were as popular or were done the same way in different eras. So I also don't think that I think it's kind of more of a commentary on kind of like information in our modern era in general, where you kind of don't know what to believe until you experience it yourself. So even the most respected reviewer might have an opinion on a movie, but until I go see it for myself, I'm really not going to know what my opinion is on that movie. So I think that more people do it that way. But at the same time, I think that, to your credit, writing something down, and I like the way you said that, like writing something down, even in a script for a video, I guess, but it kind of forces you to think, and it forces you to process your own ideas before, or even while you're writing, because once you get to the end of it, you're like, oh, this sounds dumb, like I don't want anybody to read this. I'm not going to go put this in a newspaper. No newspaper is going to publish this. Or, wow, that was a really insightful review. And then on the other side, and this is my last point, I think that there are also, it's tough to find objective reviewers. I think most people have a perspective, whether it's political, cultural, whatever their case may be. Most people are writing from a perspective, so it's hard to even appreciate that unless you're aligned with that perspective. So it's like, oh, from a masculine perspective, Top Gun was an awesome movie because there's jets and it's fighting and it's boys. It's like it's a guy movie, yeah. But like from a feminist perspective, maybe that movie, and you're going to get two completely different reviews based on those perspectives. So, and nothing wrong with either point of view. It's just where are you going to read your reviews, and then I guess you're going to read the review that's most like your perspective. So you might miss out on a movie because somebody told you it was going to be a certain way because they have their perspective, and then you chose not to watch it. And so, I don't know. It's tough for sure.
I think that's exactly that, to your point right there. I think that's the reason why a lot of I'll use Disney for instance. That's why a lot of people don't go see movies. Like OG was telling me, I think it was either Wish or different. I forgot which movie it was. We were kind of talking about it, but people didn't go see the movie because it was getting these low. I don't want to say ratings, but reviews that say it wasn't doing good. But then I think George went to go see it, and he said the movie was amazing. And I think that's what's missing is people watching these reviews saying, "Hey, this guy says it's not good. I'm not going to go watch it."
Right.
or I'm gonna. And another thing we've also mentioned was, you know, going to the movies. Watching a movie at the movie theaters is a lot different from being on your couch, you know, smoking your hookah or whatever the case may be, and watching a movie. And I think that's a lot of where some of this is missing too, when it comes to these reviews and these ratings on some of these movies or TV shows, in, you know, in general.
And I think what has really kind of killed like the fan conversations around movies and just, you know, content in general is a culture war, because it's no longer about the content. It's no longer about, say, Wish in particular, right? Being a good or bad movie. It's
Right.
the studio is connected to, okay, so Disney is woke. So
Right.
if you're like this culture warrior, we're trying to like take down woke Disney, right? So
Right.
at that point, it doesn't even matter if the movie's good or not, because we have to
Right.
make sure it flops, basically.
Right.
There's like
Yeah.
a political agenda there, you know?
Yeah, so it's like the subtext of a movie, or the perception of the subtext of a movie, takes precedence over the actual movie itself and its ability, you know, and the movie's ability to, you know, convey story and have acting and all the you know, the quality that makes a movie a good movie. Instead of us having you know, an analytical eye towards that, we focus on the subtext of, you know, the political narrative within the film, or trying to create a political narrative of a film, even though it might not even exist, you know, depending on how rosy our glasses are.
Yeah, no, 100%, 100%.
Yeah.
There's a lot going
Mhm.
on here with this, you know. It's that's why I love this quote from George R. R. Martin, because it's like there's so much you can dive into with this, and
Mhm.
it's so relevant right now. Like it permeates through all these fandoms, you know.
Well, I'll tell you the other thing too, guys, is you know, the leisure of just going to the movie and enjoying a film on a whim, right? Like on a whim. Like, think about this, right? Like, who goes to the movies on a whim?
Not
Nobody.
many people.
Nobody. But you used to, when you were 10 years old, when you're 8 years old, 15 years old, every Friday, every Saturday, I bet you all you guys used to go to the movies once a week,
Hmm.
right?
I
It
went a
was just
lot, yeah.
it was just something that you did. Your parents dropped you off, or if you just, you know, if you're newly, you know, if you were a new driver, it was a pastime. So, from a cultural perspective, the fact that going to the movies was a pastime allowed you, um, it created the ability for you to form your own perspective, your own opinions on these films outside of what a reviewer said or a YouTube guy said, or even, you know, Siskel and Ebert for that matter, because it was so built in and ingrained to the, you know, the zeitgeist of what it was growing up in the, you know, the 80s and the 90s,
Yep.
right? But now that it's not a pastime, and now that you're more selective about how you spend your spare time, because let's face it, all of our lives have gotten more complex. You rely on a subject matter expert, and now the subject matter experts are not as clear cut as they were back in the day, because you have more voices in the spectrum now. And so now you have to filter through all these voices to find out who's the most objective, or who's even remotely objective.
Yep.
And a lot of times you know, you reach an impasse where you're just like, well, I really can't find an objective opinion on this movie. There go. I'm not even going to bother. There go. I'm not going to see the film. You know what I
Yep.
mean?
Right.
And you might catch it 6 months down the road after everybody says, you know, like almost like in a consensus kind of a way, hey, that was a pretty good movie. You should go check it out.
Yep.
Right.
And by that time, you know, the whole momentum had, you know, the movement, let's call it, has passed. It's not like, you know, it's not like Terminator 2 in 1991, where it is on the face obvious that this is a fucking awesome movie and it might be the best action movie in the last 50 years. Those moments have gone. Like, those are, you know, Jurassic Park 1993, when that movie came out, it was a title shift in the way
Yep.
that cinema was. Like, I mean, it was like, if you were there, you saw it, it was crazy.
Yeah.
Hmm.
There's no moments like that anymore.
There's too many options now, you know, too.
Right.
It's like you don't like, back when we were kids, it was like what was on TV and what was in theaters was basically those were the options we had. But now we have so many options. Not only do we have mainstream Hollywood, their content, but we got YouTube. Yeah, exactly. On the
This
phone.
fucker, this fucker right here, man.
Exactly. There's a lot of people that watch like our content, like, on YouTube, like content creators on YouTube and things like that. And that takes, attention is currency. You know what I'm saying? So if someone's spending a lot of time on YouTube watching their favorite content creator, that's taken away time from them watching one of the Hollywood studios movies or one of their shows or whatever. So it's like really hard getting eyeballs on stuff. Like when in the 50s and 60s, like, with Walt Disney, like every kid in the country was watching the Mickey Mouse Club because there was only 3 channels on network television. Like you didn't have an option. It was that or the nightly news. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And now you can you can watch cartoons in the middle of the day if you want. You can do whatever. It's just there's so much out there.
And
I also think that, like, sorry, Tones, real quick.
No, go ahead.
I just don't want to get too far away from the topic of critics. The other thing I think that kind of dies with that is, like in the 90s and the 80s, even going back to the 70s, there would be cult classic movies that weren't not popular when they were released. People thought they were bad. They were reviewed poorly. I mean, the best example I can think of is The Big Lebowski, because that movie was terribly received, absolutely driven, up and down the road as a bad movie. And it's one of my like absolute hands down favorite movies of all time. So I think that like we don't get that anymore. There's not, I'd be really curious, and maybe in 20 years, we'll look back and be like, oh my God, this one movie that came out when we were having this conversation turned into a cult classic. But I just don't see that sort of thing happening within the more mainstream thing, because it's either it passed the mark with one group or it failed with one group. It's always going to be popular to someone now, because like you were saying, there's so many options, there's so many people, and everyone's watching now. My grandmother was like, she would watch like only John Wayne westerns in black and white on AMC. She would never go to the movie theaters. But then my parents, they started to go to the movies. Then me, like you were saying, I went every week. And then my kid just sits at home and watches movies on his TV whenever he wants. It's like it's becoming so much more accessible. And with that, it's like every single form of media gets an audience. So there's no more, I guess it's like an instant cult classic, but it's only with this group, and it's never going to leave that group. It's never going to expand out. So I think that's kind of another sad part of it, of like, man, it's kind of nice to have movies that were universally not popular because of the era they were released in. Maybe it's before its time. And then a little time passes and the next generation watches it and they're like, man, that was an amazing movie. It's like, I can't even think of a single movie that came out when I was a little kid that nobody liked and now everybody likes. You know what I mean? So I just think that those changes on media, of how we consume media and how we interact with media so constantly, affect the way that things are going to look in the long run. And again, we don't even know what the consequences of that are entirely, but I definitely don't think it's going to be beneficial, because everything now is time stamped. It's like, hey, we got to capture their attention. It's formulaic. We have to have an arc that peaks here, has to have this amount of colors and brightness, and it's just science now. It's not really art anymore. It's just like, how can we make money off of this movie? Let's figure it out.
It's so true, man. Everything is everything is paint by numbers. Everything, it comes down to committee. Everything comes down to the writer's room. Are we checking all the boxes? Are we hitting our DEI quotas? All that stuff. There isn't just art for art's sake anymore. Like you said, The Big Lebowski. It was funny. I was talking to my brother earlier today. My brother's my age. He's 3 years younger, and his girlfriend's about 10 years younger than him. She's I think she's still in her late 20s, but she has never seen Natural Born Killers. With Woody Harrelson, and he was like, "Wait, you've never seen Natural Born Killers?" So he puts it on, and she was like, her mind was fucking blown.
Yep.
But here's a movie back in the 1990s. Well, and this movie, if you've never seen Natural Born Killers, it's an edgy film. You feel like you're on drugs by the end of the movie because of the psychedelic nature of the film. But the underpinnings of the film is about the how can you put it? The epigenetic effect on children when they grow up in abused households. like how somebody is born a psychopath and how they turn into a serial killer based off of their upbringing, and how it's no fault of theirs. Like they're just byproducts of their, of adolescence in a broken home. That is what the movie at its core is ultimately about, and it can be viewed as grotesque. But let's face it, it is grotesque. Like this is a grotesque aspect of human nature. But you would never see a movie like Natural Born Killers in the year 2024, or The Big
Not at all.
Lebowski, or Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, or name one, Fight Club. I mean, like they just don't
Definitely.
exist. Like David Fincher does not thrive in 2024.
Yep.
Because or the Wachowski sisters or brothers, or whatever you want to call them. You know what I mean?
Well,
So it's like why is that? OG, like why is that, dude?
yeah, it's a fantastic point. And then the other thing too is I think there's something to be said, like when we were kids, like there's something to be said about not getting everything instantaneously, right? Like, so when I was a kid, like it was like I had to wait until Saturday morning to watch my cartoons.
Yep.
So when Saturday morning hit, it was like a special thing. It was like exciting, these cartoons,
Yeah.
And nowadays kids don't have that. And I feel bad because like there was like sheer joy, that Saturday morning
Yes.
joy, waking up and the cartoons. And kids nowadays don't have that because they got their phone and they can watch a cartoon whenever they want, and it's just like that instantaneous kind of culture we live in now. It's convenient, it's cool to some degree, but it takes away a lot too, I think.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think George R. R. Martin's House of the Dragon was a product of like bad reviews from season 8 is why he didn't get, or House of the Dragon didn't get even better reviews than they got, because people didn't watch it. People did not watch season 1 of House of the Dragon because they were so, pissed off about how season 8 ended of Game of Thrones. And I've said this many times before. I do a lot of Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon content on my TikTok, and every time I put something about House of the Dragon or Game of Thrones, the same comments pop up in my video. Is I hate this show. I didn't watch it. Season 8 was terrible. So is season 1 of House of the Dragon, and I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. Like it's, for one. Like I can go deep into this, but season 8 wasn't written by George R. R. Martin. Season 8 of Game of Thrones wasn't written by him. Season 1 of House of the Dragon was a product of him. Like he wrote this, and he's probably getting a lot of hate because of how season 8 ended, even though it might have been a little bit of his fault, but it was the what's their name, DB Weiss and
Benioff and Weiss.
Benioff, like they were the main culprits of why it flopped. And like I said, we've gotten deep into this about their Star Wars project and all that, but at the same time, this is a whole new TV show. Yeah, it's a prequel to Game of Thrones, but it's a whole new show that should get the right reviews from people who aren't pissed off about season 8 and how it ended. And unfortunately, that's just how some people viewed season 1, and it sucks because all the people who've watched it all agree that I've talked to, it was a great show.
Oh, great fantastic show. Yeah. It's that internet culture, right? It's kind of like that tribalism, like, oh, I'm mad because season 8 was bad. So now everything they do from here on out is going to suck. It's like, come on, you got to give things a chance,
Well, and I also think that lends pretty good credence, though, to the memory of viewers, especially when season 8 was so universally not loved, like to a certain extent, and not really in this perspective, but like if there were a season 9 with like the same cast and the same writers and the same directors, maybe you'd have more of a leg to stand on saying, well, I'm just not even going to waste my time with season 9 because I was really upset with season 8. But like when there's a completely new product with completely new cast, completely new writers, completely new director, like everything is brand new. It's like you can probably take a risk at least, to watch the first one. But it sucks that season 8 had such an impact on House of the Dragon, and probably such an impact on the Game of Thrones kind of universe as a whole, where there are people who are probably sworn off the television Game of Thrones universe just because of Game of Thrones, the first series. So, again, that's just, people people have their
Which
opinions and have their perspectives, and they dig in deep, and that's how they're going to roll now.
which logically C Mills doesn't make any sense, right? Like if you
Right.
were if you were looking at averages, right? So like 7 out of 8 were great. But
Exactly.
1 out of 8 didn't perform with your expectations. You're gonna write the whole thing off. That's a
Yeah.
lot, dude. That's illogical.
But see, like
Yeah.
I'll throw a wrench in your gears, because from my perspective, season 4 through 8 was bad. So
There you
like,
go.
because I'm like heavily into the book, so it's like
Right.
after season 3, it kind of like really just differentiated from the book. So I would watch here and there. I'd catch up on things, and like the Battle of the Bastards, like I had to watch that episode. Yeah, I mean that scene, the whole episode was insane. But like, and they've done amazing things. I think the show was shot beautifully. The locations that they chose were amazing, and so much of that was perfect. But again, it comes down to perspective. If and most people thought 7 out of 8 were great, and I would agree that they did a really good job. But when you get to the ending of anything, you're always going to piss off half the group of people with the way that it ends. So it's tough, but I agree with you. I do think it's illogical, especially comparing it to House of the Dragon, which I will fully admit I was tentative. When it was being announced and was being launched, I was like, man, kind of like how you said earlier about Ghostbusters, like I really hope, like I'm going to watch it. I'm going to give it its fair shot, but at the same time, like I have this feeling in my heart that it's not going to be what I expect. But it lived up and surpassed my expectations. I mean, I thought House of the Dragon was absolutely phenomenal show. Like I was dying for a season 2 immediately as it ended. So I was like, I haven't felt that way in forever about a show. So yeah, I agree with you though that there can be a lot of illogic to it, and I think that most people don't use logic when they're thinking about these things, especially such a big title like Game of Thrones, where people have been invested in the book since the early 90s and have this vision of what it should be, and then it's not logic, it's emotion, it's pure emotional response. So
that's a great way to exactly C Mills. It's not logic, it's a very emotional thing. Fans get wrapped up emotionally in this stuff, and especially stuff that goes back far. If you're talking stuff that if a franchise like Ghostbusters, for example, or like a Star Wars was like part of your childhood, that emotion runs even hotter, because now your whole childhood is wrapped up into that, and just like it's wild.
Well, the thing too, Tones, is that if you don't think about it very often, then it becomes very difficult, or you don't even get to the point where you can compartmentalize the different quality, the different qualitative aspects about a particular production, right? So like C Mills probably watches House of the Dragon, and he probably like compartmentalizes the acting, the cinematography, the effects, the accuracy with regard to the interpretation of the books, and he can grade every single one individually and say, okay, this is like a cumulative score I'm going to give it. Whereas somebody might just base it based off of like its ability to hold their attention.
Yeah, exactly.
And that person doesn't have a good attention span to begin with.
Exactly.
And how many people do you know that are like that? Everybody.
Yep. That's 100% true. And to wrap this all up, it's if you have criticism, guys, more than welcome to express and criticize things. But if you hate on things consistently and you don't like things, like for a video, for instance, say I wanted to talk about Ghostbusters or whatever, and I didn't like the movie, right? I'm not going to go and make a huge video of how much I hated the movie. It's like there's sometimes where it's like, just don't make the video. As a content creator, just don't make the video of how much you didn't like it. Like especially if you're negative all the time. Obviously, if you want to make a negative video on something that you're passionate about, like you were going into this movie thinking you were going to expect this huge, movie and it was just going to be flat out amazing. Yeah, like of course, express how much you didn't like it and what you didn't like about it. Just don't hate on everything. Like as a human, like criticize it. Just don't hate on everything.
Yeah, because go ahead, OG.
No, I was just gonna say it's like I see people, like, I'm not gonna say names or anything, but like I see people that talk about stuff that they hate, and George R.R. Martin mentions that like directly in this quote, but it's like video after video after video is like, this thing is terrible. It sucks. It's terrible. It sucks. It's like for me, I can't get into that headspace, right? Like I physically don't have the energy to get up there on camera and make content about something that I don't like.
Yeah.
If there's something that's making me that mad, where I'm going to do video after video after video about how much it sucks, it's like, what am I doing with my life? Like, why am I wasting my time and energy putting my time into this thing?
Yeah.
You know, it would be much better served to move on from the thing that isn't making me happy anymore and find something that does, right? If I'm not into Star Trek anymore, let me find something else where I'm a little bit more I'm happier, you know?
Yeah.
And instead, these people get like stuck in this thing where it's like, yeah, man, like I don't like Star Wars, so I'm gonna make a Star Wars Sucks video every freaking day for 6 years. It's like, dude, get a life.
Yeah.
And
There's so many.
we're in there.
There's so many more there's so many more productive things to invest your energy in, and things you don't like, you know, poverty, racism, and taxes, you know. But yeah, I mean, you can manifest your energy in so much more productive ways, you know, things that you don't like, you disagree, you find, you know, offensive socially, culturally, you know. But with regard to like all that hate, though, you know, what it does is it turns into a pink sludge in the sewers of New York, and then Vigo the Carpathian comes back and tries to rule it. So, like, you know, don't create the pink sludge under the sewers in New York. You know what I mean?
I love it. I fucking love it. Final thoughts, guys. Anything you guys want to add before we get out of here?
Oh, one thing I do want to add real quick, Tones, is like also one thing that I think also when it comes to hate or whatever, I think there is an element of truth to this where it's like, if something is getting a lot of hate, right? Whether it be a studio, whether it be even like just like a content creator or a person, there is an element of like, what's the word for it? Where it's like that thing is very, it's very relevant and very successful, right? Because people tend to hate on things that are doing well. Like, you're not going to hate on the YouTuber who has 10 subs or something, right? Like, you hate on the YouTuber like the PewDiePie, whoever, who's got like a 3 billion subs, right? So there's that element here too, where I think people have to put that in perspective, where it's like people are going to hate on Game of Thrones, or they're going to hate on Disney or Warner Brothers or whatever, but at the end of the day, if they're hating and they're still talking about your product, I guess it's not that bad of a thing,
free publicity right there.
Right, exactly. So at the end of the day, it is annoying. I mean, it is annoying to kind of have to, as a fan, to kind of like sludge through that. But I think for even like the studios or even like individuals who are getting that hate, it's like, well, it could be worse. I guess if they're not talking about you, that would probably be a worse alternative, because then you're really irrelevant. And then you're Felix, then you're basically like, you know, Felix the cat or Popeye or something. You know, no one cares.
Yeah. Love it. Oh, that's funny. Guys, we're gonna wrap it up there. I appreciate all of you guys. This was a really fun conversation that we had, and it was something that when I originally sent this OG, I already had everything flown in my mind of where we were going to go with this, and we pretty much all agreed on everything that, you know, we all touched on a lot of things that I was thinking, and I loved it. I think this was an amazing episode, and I want to thank you guys for joining me. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Let's start with Slimer. Slimer, if you could tell the people where they can find you on social media, sir.
Yeah, so Tones, you guys can find me on Slime Square 84. You can find me on YouTube at OG55. And my last statement with regard to, you know, this whole conversation we've had: before you criticize, put yourself in the other person's shoes.
Yeah.
If you are not a writer, if you're not a producer, if you're not a director, if you're not an actor, think about how difficult that might be before you just outright blatantly say, hey, this product sucks, especially you haven't done it before.
Yeah.
So have some consideration.
Exactly.
Yep.
And if anyone's going to hate on any of us on this panel, just remember,
to everyone who watches my life and gossips about it, don't give up. Season 2 is about to come out.
I fucking love it. Fucking love it. OG, if you could tell the people where they can find you, please.
You can find me on Orange Grove 55 on YouTube. We talk all kinds of stuff: studio, theme parks. We always have a good time over there with these fellas. Always fun talking shop. You can find me on Twitter at Orange Grove 55, and you can find me on Instagram, Orange Grove 55. And again,
Yes,
Tones,
sir.
I want to thank you, brother, for having us on. It's always fun talking this stuff with you, man.
Oh, always a blast. Always a blast hanging out with you guys. Appreciate it. And Colin, I don't know. You don't have social media, do you?
I'm just a dude.
Yeah.
I'm like, shit. When they get to me, I'm gonna have to be like, yeah, I'm here in my house. You can find me here 7 days a week. But yeah, no social media, not on it like that. But always happy to contribute. The layman's opinion.
You guys, if you guys haven't seen the episode we did, with Colin, we did an episode. He's a D&D. He writes his own D&D. What was it called? Dungeon Master.
Yeah, I'd say I've been a DM for like 10 years.
DM, okay. Yeah,
Nice.
so he writes his own storylines and stuff. So we kind of get into why he started doing that, and it's a very interesting episode. If you guys haven't seen it, go to Bad Thoughts Podcast and you guys will be able to see that episode. It was a lot of fun. But yeah, guys, go ahead and comment and let us know what you guys thought about the topic we discussed today. We enjoy talking film and stuff like that on this channel, so this was a very nice episode to kind of get out what we were thinking as far as negative reviews and stuff like that. So comment and let us know what you guys thought about the video, like and subscribe, and if you guys want to see me on social media, Tones_TV on all platforms. All right, hope you guys have a great night. Love y'all.